Let's now hop in and talk about another two demos built with new Make.com Gavel integration. The first demo will be for an estate planning workflow, covering the feature of Gavel that essentially allows you to collect information from your customer. And then the second demo would be sending that automated engagement letter, i.e. using Gavel as more of a document automation platform, as the example that I already mentioned previously. So for the first one, estate planning intake form, quite simple form. We just have two pages over here. The first is the client's email address. And then the second page, we have a repeating item of related parties. And so in here, what the user is able to define is the full name of the person and then the relationship that you have, right? So for example, like spouse, child, grandchild, or other. Actually, I'm not sure. All right, there's also a repeating item. I'm not sure why it's showing it up over here. Let's actually run the workflow. You'll see it in action. The other system that we're connecting Gavel to is actually Airtable. Airtable is essentially what I call Excel on steroids. It's a database that's defined. You can obviously enter information such as in Google Sheets. The cool thing is then you can connect different objects together, right? So for example, the related parties can be connected to matters, and then any of the financial assets that we're connecting from those related parties can be connected to the actual related party. It also provides you a lot more ways of visualizing that data, which wouldn't be available in normal Google Sheets, and a lot of flexibility ultimately. So the first thing that you'll need is the client email. So we already have this client over here, Giorgio. So let's just copy their email. We'll come into here in the client email address, click continue. We'll define all the related parties that they have. So for example, let's say Maria. Maria will be our spouse. Then Lorenzo, for example, as our child. Let's click continue. After that, they will have a second level nested repeating item, which essentially for each one of those related parties, it will ask for their assets, right? Which again, there can be multiple. So for example, let's say Maria has a bank account with a monetary value of 120,000. And for example, also has a car, let's say 25,000. And click continue. We can review all the information we entered. And then it will pass on to Lorenzo and ask, okay, what are Lorenzo's assets? So let's imagine Lorenzo has a boat, and that boat is worth 150,000, quite an expensive boat. Click continue. Again, I can review all the information. We'll get then the full review over here. And as soon as we submit this information, the automation will get triggered. Let me show you that automation now briefly. I'll go through step by step how to set it up after I show the demo. Now I will just activate it and make sure that it runs whenever we submit the workflow. All right, let's click continue. Continue again. Okay, it says here are your documents. We are not really generating any documents here, so that is irrelevant. The important thing is that that information is stored in the database and this automation has successfully run. So let's go back to Airtable and see, as you can see over here, the related parties have been added. If we go into the related parties section, we'll be able to see that we got their names, we got the right relationships chosen from a drop-down, they have all been linked to the right matter, and we have their financial assets displayed over here. If you now go to the financial assets, we're able to see line by line, the description, the monetary value, who owns that asset, and the matter that they're related to. The cool thing again about Airtable is that it then provides you as well a lot of options in terms of how you want to visualize the data. For example, we can enable this grid view, which will then group the financial assets by the related party, right? And so we can then very easily see, based on the general group of the matter and then subgroups of each related party, we can see the sum of their assets and the sum of the assets that we have under the full matter. Let me now actually walk you through how this automation is set up. The initial trigger is what's called a webhook. Webhook is essentially a server URL provided by Make, which listens for any events or any form submissions provided by Gavel. So whenever I add a new webhook over here, I will get this link, which I can copy to clipboard. And if I go then into the form setup, in settings on Gavel, integrations, I then create a new webhook over here and define that URL. You can also say if you want to include documents or not. It doesn't really matter for this example because obviously there are no documents. So as soon as a form is submitted, it will send information to this webhook. It will look something like this. It will have any files, if there are any. And then in the data, we have the information about all of the fields. For example, the client email. In the related party, we have the two parties, so Maria and Lorenzo. We have their full name and the relationship. And then we have under them a nested repeating item, financial assets, again with the description and the monetary value. And so we get all of that information. The next step that we do is we actually try to find that client inside of our Airtable database. There's already a pre-built action over here. You don't really need to know how to code for building this workflow. Again, it's all no code. We are choosing base where we want to be looking it up. We're choosing the table of clients. And then the most important thing is that then we're just using a formula, i.e. saying, if the email is equal to whatever we get from the data in terms of the client email field, right? If information will be found, we'll get, first of all the information about the client. Most importantly, we'll get this record ID, which is a unique identifier of that client inside of our database in Airtable. We then have a filter, which will just check that ID actually exists, i.e. that client has been found. And the cool thing about Make, it makes very easy for you to work with this nested items, with repeating items, compared, at least in my experience, to, for example, Zapier. We can enable this block over here, iterate related parties, and pass to it the list of related parties that we got from our webhook. And so what will happen is for each one of those items, all of the modules that come after it will be executed once for each related party. So we are looping essentially through these related parties. It splits the data essentially into these bundles. I call them make.com, and then for each one, again, we have the full name, we have the relationship, and then we have information about all of their financial assets. After that, we are creating the related party in its separate table, related parties. We are passing the information about the full name, about the relationship, which is actually a drop-down field, but considering that we have set up the drop-down, i.e. the single select, the same way in Gavel and in Airtable, we can just pass it directly, and we'll choose the right option out of these. And then for the relation to the client, we are adding the ID of the client record that we have found previously in step 2 over here. Creating the related party. And then for the second level nested item, i.e. the assets, we are then iterating through the assets of each related party, right? So for example, if we have 2 related parties over here, this created related party action will be executed just 2 times. And then all the other modules after this, after we iterate the financial assets, will be executed once for each financial assets of each related party. So in a similar manner as before, we are iterating over the financial assets and then creating that as separate record, again, in Airtable. We are putting the description, the monetary value, and then the relation to now the related party over here. Right? So after that, after running it, we get something like this. All related parties linked to the correct person, and then all these people linked correctly to the matter. Let's now look at the second use case, which is generating an engagement letter as soon as a new matter is opened in Clio. So for that, we have a separate workflow. It doesn't have any repeating items over here, so it's more simple in that regard. We're just asking for basic information, client's name, street address, client city, zip code, and then some question about the actual agreement, right? So what is the agreement date? What are the client's legal services that will be provided to them? And what is the initial deposit or trust request amount? Now, we have defined as well a document, a docx template in relation as well to this workflow over here. And as you can see, I have highlighted all the custom fields. So populating the client name, formatting and populating the agreement date, the description of the services, the deposit as well properly formatted, and then finally at the end as well, the client address. So the cool thing about this automation is that we won't have to manually trigger it. It will be executed automatically as soon as we update a field in Clio Manage. For that, I have a separate matter over here. I have defined a few custom fields. The first one being the stage, right, of that matter, for example, like initial console, then onboarding, service delivery, etc. If you have the top subscription plan in Clio Manage, you actually have access to kind of like a native stage function with the Kanban board. And then I have also added a few other fields over here for the engagement letter specifically, right? So firstly, we have the services description, let's say production of an operating agreement and standard NDA, the initial deposit amount as well that can be specified directly from the Clio Manage interface. And then this more of a system field, it will change to yes as soon as the engagement letter has been generated and uploaded to the Clio Manage matter. Now, the rest of the information, right, for example, the client address and the matter number are all taken directly from the contact, for example, related to this. As you can see, we have the address, right? And obviously any information about the matter can also be taken from here as well. Here's how the automation will look like. We won't have time to go into detail of all of these sections over here, but essentially the general flow is whenever a new matter is updated, it will trigger this automation. We then get the information about the matter. We are doing some formatting. We get the information about the contact. We create a session with the data in Gavel using our workflow that we have just shown. And then after that, we are downloading the documents, uploading them to Clio Manage so that they appear in this Documents tab over here. So you can see now it's empty. And then updating the matter itself to notify that the document has been generated. So let's run this once and make a change in our Clio Manage matter. Obviously here as well, you'll be able to modify this, this field over here. Let's change our stage to onboarding and click Save Matter. Right, so the matter has been edited, and sometimes it can take a few seconds for it to populate, sometimes even a few minutes. While we wait for that, let me also explain to you the other ways that you can trigger this automation from Clio Manage. So one is obviously this automated way on the background, right? So listening, for example, for Clio Manage for updates on a specific matter or contact. Another thing that very few people know about is actually this more actions over tab over here. Again, using the API, using make.com, you can enable this custom actions, which will enable you to trigger automations to, for example, even go to like a separate form that is already pre-filled and you can start working from, again, by enabling the section over here, for example, generate engagement letter. As you can see, the automation has been executed, that's running now. And if we go now to the Documents tab, you'll see that we now have the PDF and we have the docx. If we open up the PDF, let's see how it looks like. We'll see that we got the information about the client. We got the current date, the 5th of September, correctly formatted. We got this production of an operating agreement and a standard NDA, custom field. We got the deposit amount and all the client information as well over here has been pulled through. Right now, you could go even a step beyond that and automatically send it for sign-in. That's what we would usually do, unless you need to make any changes to this document. So as soon as you change the stage in Clio, in your Clio Manage or whatever other system, all of those things happen automatically and you don't need to worry about it. If you go back as well and refresh the screen, we'll see that the engagement letter generated field has also been updated to yes, meaning that as well, we can then filter for that field in our automation to make sure it doesn't trigger multiple times if the matter is updated again. Now, in case you actually want to implement an automation like this in your practice, I've created a template for the automation I've just shown in the video for make.com, which will just take a few minutes to install on your account. Getting that template is absolutely free of charge, and you can do so by joining our legal automation community on school.com that we have recently opened. Apart from getting access to all the automation videos and templates that we are creating, both past and future ones, you'll also be able to mingle with like-minded law firm owners and managers interested in automation and legal tech, and also be able to interact directly with myself and our team members to be able to ask us any questions, specific questions that you may have about automation. Again, join that completely free of charge. Just click the link down below or in my bio to join the community and get access to all the templates and the other benefits.